The Southern accent is fading away. Hi there, everyone. It's Jeff, and this is Plain English, where we help you upgrade your English with stories about current events and trending topics. We're all studying languages here. You're working on English, I'm working on Spanish, and one thing that confounds language learners is accents. I'm in Mexico, so it's harder for me to understand Spanish from Spain. For you, if you're used to the North American accent, then maybe a Scottish accent would be hard to understand. But today, we're talking about the Southern accent. It's the accent common across the southeast of the U.S. In large southern cities like Atlanta, the traditional accent is starting to fade away. And if you don't know exactly what that means, well, you're in luck, because in the second half of the episode, I'm going to show you exactly what fade away means. You can find the transcript of today's episode at plainenglish.com/642. That is all thanks to JR, the producer. Now, let's get going. In linguistics, an accent is a way of pronouncing the words in a language. Accents are most often identified with geographic areas: the British accent, the Australian accent, the American accent. Inside the US, we have several distinct accents. Many are associated with a city. Boston has a strong accent, as does New York. Those two cities are only a few hundred miles away, but they have distinctive pronunciation patterns. Philadelphia and Chicago also have their own accents. But there's one accent associated with about a third of the land area in the U.S., and that is the Southern accent. There are variations, but I think we can safely categorize the Southern accent as the accent that you would hear from Texas to about Virginia. The accent developed in the decades after the American Civil War, so the late 1800s and the early 1900s. For many decades, the South was less economically advanced than other parts of the country were. And for much of the 20th century, the Southern accent was considered less prestigious. If you spoke with a Southern accent in New York or Boston, people often assumed you came from a less economically developed part of the country. This is unfair, but true. People outside the South thought a person speaking with a Southern accent would be less educated or less sophisticated. Remember what I said: unfair, but true. The South today is much different than it was. Southern cities today offer a high quality of life, lower cost of living, lower taxes, diversity, and fast-growing companies. The South has a booming manufacturing sector. It's home to high-tech companies, and it has some of the best universities in the country. Pleasant weather is a nice touch. And Americans are moving there. Californians are beating a path to Texas. New Yorkers are going to Florida. Midwesterners are going to Nashville. Atlanta is booming with new arrivals from all over. Charlotte, Raleigh, Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, they're all gaining new residents. And all this internal migration means that in many places, the Southern accent is fading away. Recent studies show that younger generations in Atlanta, Raleigh, and other Southern cities speak with a more neutral accent. They're dropping the traditional speech patterns that have characterized the South for over a century. Why is this happening? One tempting explanation is to look at the media. People on television, on the news, on social media, on the radio, in podcasts, they've tried to neutralize their accents to give them broad national appeal. And so it's tempting to say that Southerners are losing their accents because they hear more neutral forms of speaking on TV and online now that we live in an era of national or international media. At the same time, travel is much less expensive than it once was, so people have exposure to many more forms of speaking. But linguists say that's not quite right. We develop our pronunciation patterns early in life. We learn how to speak our first words from our parents or caregivers, and then we mimic the others in our lives, principally at school and in our families, all at a young age. Only later do we pay close attention to how people speak on television or online. A more likely explanation is migration. As more and more adults have moved to the South from other areas, they teach their children to speak with more neutral accents. And more teachers in schools come from elsewhere, so children are more likely to hear a mix of accents or sometimes a neutral accent. Cities like Atlanta are full of new arrivals, and so children born in Atlanta hear less region-specific pronunciation in their early years. Migration is not slowing down, so will the Southern accent ever go away? Probably not anytime soon. The studies have focused on pronunciation patterns in larger, more cosmopolitan cities like Atlanta, exactly the kind of places that have experienced this influx in new residents in recent decades. In a few decades, it might be rare to hear a Southern accent in Atlanta. But more rural areas with less migration are less affected by this trend. The most likely outcome is that the Southern accent becomes something you hear in pockets of the South rather than across the whole region. Even in other parts of the US, the accent is getting less pronounced with every generation. It's less common for families to stay together in one city for multiple generations, It's more common to marry someone from another region, especially as people delay having children. And that means region-specific accents are less likely to be passed down. It has even happened with me. I knew 3 of my 4 grandparents. 2 of them spoke with a pronounced Boston accent, 1 with a Southern accent, and I, at least I think, I have a neutral accent. Fade away is a phrasal verb. To fade away is to gradually disappear or to become less noticeable over time. Imagine that you're at an outdoor concert, but you have to leave early. When you're in the concert area, the sound of the band is very loud. But you start walking to your car. You parked far away. What happens to the sound of the band as you walk to your car? The sound starts to fade away. It doesn't happen all at once. The band is still playing, but slowly you're walking away, and slowly the sound starts to go from loud to less loud, then to a normal volume, then quieter, and when you reach your car, you might just barely hear the sound of the band playing. That's what it means to fade away. The sound of the band faded away as you got closer to your car. It gradually became less noticeable until it almost disappeared. Here's another one with sound. The Southern accent in the US is fading away in large Southern cities. Young people in cities like Atlanta and Raleigh are now speaking in a neutral accent. It's not as common to hear the Southern accent in those cities, not as common as it was a few decades ago. So in those places, the Southern accent is fading away. It's becoming less noticeable. In those places, it's likely that the Southern accent will be rare sometime in the future. This will happen over generations, but the accent is fading away in those big Southern cities. Memories can fade away too, especially those from childhood. Most of us have memories that we'll hold on to for life, but we also have memories that fade away. The years go by, and those memories become weaker and weaker. And then, now that we're older, we look back and find that memories of certain people, extended family members, friends, teachers, those memories have faded away. They've gradually disappeared. Another way to use fade away is with emotions. Let's try it with excitement. If you give a child a present and the child loves it, there are 2 potential outcomes. Either the gift will provide lasting joy, or the excitement will fade away. As a gift giver, you try to guess, and you try to give a gift that a kid will hold on to and value for a long time. But it's impossible to know ahead of time. Often, kids get presents They get excited at the beginning. They love it. But then the excitement fades away. And a few months later, that toy, that gift, is collecting dust somewhere. Now, I'll give you a tip. The word fade means to become less distinct, less strong. Fade away is similar, but fade away implies that something will disappear completely or almost completely. If you have a sofa, or better yet, a painting, if you have a painting and you hang it on the wall next to your window, and if the sun comes in the window every day, then the colors of the painting will start to fade. But the paint will never disappear. So we would say the colors on the painting are starting to fade, but we don't say fade away. Same with the couch by the window. The colors are fading in the part of the couch exposed to direct sunlight. If you wash your favorite clothes over and over, the colors will fade. If you don't want to wait that long, you can buy jeans that are already faded. But we say simply fade because the color won't disappear. So these are examples of fade. We say that when something is not going to disappear or almost disappear. Fade away, remember, means something is disappearing or almost disappearing. Childhood memories, we gradually lose some of them, and one day they'll be gone forever. That's why we have to continue to make good memories, right? Walking away from that concert, eventually you can just barely hear the music. Walk far enough and you won't hear it at all. The sound is fading away. The excitement of opening a new present, well, that often disappears entirely, right? The excitement can fade away. Here are a few more quick examples of fade away. You can stay out and watch a sunset until the light fades away. Your enthusiasm for your job might fade away if you become bored with it after a few years. A celebrity's influence might fade away if people stop paying attention to him or her. The smell of a new car will fade away after about a year. And that is all for us here at Plain English, Monday, January 22nd, 2024. We talked about accents today, and that's a fun topic for English learners. So our next Plus member live call is going to be on January 30th, and the topic of the call is going to be about accents. We'll talk about which English accents you've heard, which ones you like, which ones are hard, which ones are easy. And then you can tell us if there are a lot of accents in your native language and if anyone faces discrimination based on any regional accent. So that one is coming up on January 30th, next Tuesday. If you're a Plus member, the Zoom link is on your dashboard in the live events section. If you're not yet a Plus member, consider joining. You'll be invited to live conversation calls where you can practice your speaking in a safe and supportive environment. To join us, just visit plainenglish.com/plus, Plus. And a special thanks to JR, who produces these episodes. When the background music fades away in a few seconds, that's because JR has masterfully put together the audios for you. So thanks, JR, and thanks to all of you for being part of Plain English. See you on Thursday.